What's going on, everybody? Khaleep's Tech here, coming back at you with another video. In this video, we're going to be doing a quick comparison between the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G and the Samsung Galaxy A22 5G. Now, before we go any further, I do want to remind you to hit that subscribe button, and if you want to learn more about either of these phones individually, I will be linking to several other videos about them in the description, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and my favorite accessories for them. But with that being said, let's get into it. So with the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G, we're getting a 6.6-inch 120Hz PLS TFT display with a resolution of 1080p, a PPI of 400, an aspect ratio of 20:9, and an 82.5% screen-to-body ratio. With the Samsung Galaxy A22 5G, we're getting a 6.6-inch 90Hz TFT display with a resolution of 1080p, a PPI of 399, an aspect ratio of 20:9, and an 82.3% screen-to-body ratio. So essentially, I would say these displays are about the same. Both of them look really nice, they have great display technology, 1080p resolutions that give us nice, sharp, crisp images, and at 6.6 inches, they're definitely on the larger side as well. But that being said, one difference here is that with the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G, we are getting a 120Hz refresh rate versus 90Hz with the A22 5G. Now honestly, this is really not going to make a huge difference, but that being said, with the A23 5G, the movement on the screen is going to be a little bit faster and smoother. You probably can't really tell a whole lot in this video, but when you're actually using the phones, if you're doing something like watching a video, playing games, stuff like that with a lot of motion on the screen, you will get a slightly smoother and more fluid experience with the A23 5G, and the phone in general is going to feel a little bit more premium to use. But really, other than that, the displays are pretty much the same. Now for storage, with the A23 5G, we're getting 64GB of internal storage with microSD card expansion, and with the A22 5G, we're getting 128GB with microSD card expansion as well. Now this might not really be a super fair comparison as far as storage goes, because I think there are some international versions of the A23 5G that do actually have 128GB as well, and meanwhile with the A22 5G, this phone is actually not officially launched in the US, so as far as the different variants go, there is a bit of a difference there. But with these two specific phones in this video, the A22 5G does have the advantage, having double the storage of the A23 5G. So if you're more of a power user, if you have a bunch of apps and stuff like that, then definitely keep this in mind. But if you are more of a light user and you don't have a ton on your phone, or maybe just stuff like photos and videos that you can easily put on a microSD card anyway, then the A23 5G with 64GB should be at least okay. But again, keep in mind, I'm pretty sure there is another version of this phone that has 128GB. So if you do have a version of the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G that has 128GB, definitely let me know in the comments. But again, for the purpose of this comparison, this version of the A23 5G again only has 64GB. Now as far as security features go, both phones have Face Unlock, as well as fingerprint scanners right here on the power keys, so definitely a great spot for a fingerprint scanner. But starting with the A23 5G, let's give them a try. There we go, one more time. And there we go. And now for the A22 5G. There we go, one more time. And there we go. So as you can see, real fast and responsive there, definitely no issues at all. And again, both phones also have Face Unlock, so if you want to use that instead, you always can. Now taking a look at the camera setups here, with the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G, we got a water drop notch for the front facing camera. In fact, for that matter, these phones pretty much have the exact same design, and they're both also 8 megapixels. Then on the back, with the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G, we're getting a 50 megapixel main camera, a 5 megapixel ultra wide camera, a 2 megapixel macro camera, and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera. With the Samsung Galaxy A22 5G, we got a triple camera setup here with a 48 megapixel main camera, a 5 megapixel ultra wide camera, and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera. So weirdly enough, the A22 5G is the only phone I've seen that has an ultra wide camera and no macro camera. Usually it's the other way around. I'm not a huge fan of macro cameras myself, so I'm not really bothered by it. But that being said, if you do want a macro camera, the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G will have an advantage here. But other than that, both phones do have really good features otherwise, including the ultra wide camera, portrait mode, all that stuff. So if you're taking a lot of photos and you want a wider variety of features, while the macro camera gives the A23 5G a little bit of an advantage, you really won't go wrong with either of them. For video, the A23 5G has a max recording quality of 1080p in both the rear and front cameras, and the A22 5G has a max recording quality of 2K in the rear camera and 1080p in the front. So here, I guess the A22 5G has a bit of an advantage, but honestly, I don't really know anyone who actually likes to record in 2K. I feel like if you want a higher resolution than 1080p, you might as well just go to 4K, which of course neither of these phones have. So on one hand, if you do want to record in 2K, 2K, the A22 5G will have a bit of an advantage, but in general, the video quality with the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G, despite it not being able to record in 2K, is still just as good if not better. Now as far as RAM and processor go, with the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G we're getting 4GB of RAM, although there is another variant with 6, and with this phone we're getting the Qualcomm Snapdragon 695 5G processor. With the Samsung Galaxy A22 5G, we're getting 6GB of RAM with the MediaTek Dimensity 700 5G processor. So again, in general, there is a 6GB variant of the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G as well, but this specific version in my hand, and most likely all the other carrier versions, does have only 4. But that being said, I did run Geekbench 5 benchmark tests on both of these phones, and here are the scores right here. As you can see from this test, the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G does have a bit of an advantage when it comes to performance, so if you do want the faster phone of the two, the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G will be the way to go. But that being said, the A22 5G is really not that far behind, and in general from my experience, I would say both phones are pretty fast, and no matter what you're doing on them, whether you're doing basic activities like web browsing and social media, or maybe more complex stuff like mobile gaming, both of these phones will get the job done. But that being said, neither phone is nearly as fast as something like a flagship phone, for example, so if you're doing more high performance activities, definitely keep this in mind, because neither phone is really meant for that kind of stuff. But again, if you just want the faster phone between the two, the A23 5G will be a significantly better choice. But that being said, if you're just doing more light activities like web browsing, social media, and you're not really going to be on your phone all the time, the Samsung Galaxy A22 5G will also get the job done. Now for the battery, both phones do have 5000 mAh batteries, but with the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G, we're getting 25W fast charging, and with the A22 5G, we're getting 15. So as far as battery life and longevity goes, it's going to be the same with these phones, which is definitely really good, because a 5000 mAh battery, at least in the US, is pretty much the largest battery you can get in a smartphone. So if battery life is a priority for you, you're not going to go wrong with either of these phones. That being said, when it comes to fast charging, I don't really know how many people actually care a whole lot about it, but of course, if you want the best fast charging, the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G with 25W fast charging versus 15W with the A22 5G is definitely going to have a bit of an advantage. But keep in mind, if you do really care about fast charging and you really want to make the most of the charging speeds, with the A23 5G, you will need a 25W fast charger, and keep in mind, in case you don't have one, I will be linking to my favorite fast charger in the video description, so definitely check that out. But again, in general, both phones do have great batteries. Really the only difference here is the fast charging, and even with 15W fast charging, I have noticed the A22 5G still does charge up pretty fast. Another thing to keep in mind here is that with the A23 5G we are getting NFC, whereas the A22 5G does not have NFC, or at least not this specific one in my hand. So if you do want to make contactless mobile payments using tap and pay, the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G will have an advantage. But in general, which of these phones is better? Honestly, I do think they are really similar, and in a lot of ways they are pretty much the exact same. But that being said, overall, I do think the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G is a little bit better. First of all, the performance, while not being a huge night and day type difference, is definitely noticeable, and this phone is going to be significantly faster than the A22 5G. So if you're going to be on your phone a lot, or doing higher performance activities like mobile gaming, the A23 5G will give you a better experience. In addition to this, the A23 5G has better fast charging, it has a macro camera, whereas the A22 5G doesn't. The display has a slightly higher refresh rate, and it has NFC, which is a feature in this day and age I feel like pretty much every phone should have. But that being said, the A22 5G is not a bad device either, and honestly, in most areas, I feel like it's really not that far behind. And another thing I want to bring up one more time is the storage. Again, this version of the A23 5G, and pretty much every version you're going to get through a carrier for that matter, only has 64GB of internal storage, but I do believe the international version does have 128, and being that the A22 5G is only an international phone, I feel like while this phone obviously does have more storage than this version of the A23 5G, it's not really a fair comparison because of this. But that being said, if you do want more storage, then either the A22 5G or the international version of the A23 5G might be a better choice for you. But at the end of the day, despite the differences being a little bit more on the subtle side, I do think the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G is a decent improvement from the A22 5G. Now once again, if you want to learn more about either of these phones individually, I will be linking to several other videos about them in the description, as well as some information about pricing and availability. But that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it and found it useful, be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to follow Khalipa's Tech on Twitter and Instagram. And as always, I will see you in the next video.